Okay, we are recording. Okay, guys. So I'm going to do a walkthrough today of my track Possesion, which is like an ambient drum and bass, kind of moody drum and bass vibe. So what I'll do is I'll play it back for you, and then we'll go through all the individual tracks here and show you what I've done. Right, okay, so that was the playthrough for you. So I'll go down each individual track. Sorry about that AVG pop-up. Bloody annoying. Anyway, so we'll start with this. So this was a cello sample I used from, it was a movie, not really a movie, I guess, a show that was on over Christmas in the UK called Wurzel Gummidge. I don't know. For you Brits watching, you might know what I'm on about. Anyways, there was a nice cello sample that I used. And I just downloaded that and sort of looped it over. So I probably should have actually introduced this properly. So the type of genre of drum and bass that I make is sort of this dark, moody, I guess you could call it liquid, atmospheric, ambient drum and bass, I think it might be called. I'm not really sure. I've never seen an exact specific genre label for this type of thing. But if you think of if you guys know of B Complex, for example, he's just like she's like a Slovakian drum and bass producer. She did songs like Beautiful Lies and things like that. Really, really great work. She definitely really kind of inspired me to do this sort of stuff. And so a lot of the for those sort of a little bit unfamiliar, a lot of the characteristics are very much emphasis on like natural acoustic instruments like cellos and violins and things like that, and then a very kind of nice, quite subtle sub that kind of runs in the background to typical drum and bass beat, and then for like what I do in my work is I kind of put this little gritty overlay. So that's a bit of an introduction, and I'll talk a little bit more about it as we get into each individual track, but that's kind of a rough idea. So anyway, so that's the cello part. Let's go to the, these are just these sort of nice little rides that I put in. Kind of accents the cello bit a little bit. And then we'll get into the sub and I'll show you guys how I made it. So listen to that. I don't know how much of it comes through for you, but that's sort of the sub. And what I did was I watched an old tutorial from back in the day, I think it was 2008, something like that, and that tutorial was, I believe it was like a sort of a low like a sub tutorial. Netsky was sort of the big influencer of that sub kind of culture sort of thing. Anyway, I'm waffling, but yeah. So this is sort of the bass. So what I did was use 3 triangle sine waves. This one's on formant, this one's on spectrum, this is on formant. A slight detuning to kind of give it, I mean, you won't necessarily hear it through this video, but if you make the patch yourself, you'll hear kind of this slightly off chorused effect, which gives just a lot more body to the bass, so you have a much sort of warmer bass. You also have a bit of chorusing here. You can adjust, so for example, you can create what's called a macro, and that sort of as a shortcut adjusts all these knobs for you, so you can kind of listen to it as is. And then you can crank the chorus up and you can kind of hear that real widening. I tend to leave as it is because obviously I layer it with that sort of gritty bass, which I'll show you in a minute, but that this kind of nice sub sits really nicely underneath it, and I've had a lot of people say they really love this sub when they hear my tracks or just in general on tutorials, and it's a really nice sub, and so definitely yeah, these are sort of the settings for it. It's very simple. I mean, it's got sort of a little bit of a high pass on it. You've got the phase set to a quarter here, but that's actually turned off, so don't worry about that. Varying intensities on the first and third, but these are sort of the idea. So you can just take a screen grab of this, copy the controls, etc. So that's why it's called. So that's how that sounds. Right, on to. Now, what you tend to do is you tend to hear a lot of... Yeah, that's how it's supposed to sound. Whoops. So what you'll find a lot in this genre of drum and bass is like vocal cuts. So you'll find these sort of little vocal cuts that appear sort of in during the build up and also during the main part of the track. And so for me, I've really worked that, and in this case with this Possesion track, the actual original clip, which is credit, by the way, to the Unthanks. They're the ones who wrote this song. The Scarecrow Knows is the original one. Anyways, that's what they did. So that's what I did, sorry, to this track, because I just kind of took those vocal stabs and plopped them in, and then, you know, overlaying with the cello sounds quite nice. So it really sets that moody atmosphere up, and then with the sub on top, yeah, very nice. And then these are some, sort of offbeat hi-hats, just kind of add a little bit of volume to the build up, and then I just use like a little high-passed drum and bass loop. You'll find that a lot in liquid drum and bass tracks, high-passed drum and bass loops. So take the drum and bass loop, throw it through a high pass. So I use Fruity Filter, cut off, you know, about a third of the way, high pass cranked, a bit of resonance because it gives a little bit of that, you know, slightly crunchy is the right word, but that sort of slight definition to it. And then we have down here, so this is, I believe these are just shuffles, hats. Yeah, I believe they're just like, just like a hat loops. And then we have this again here, which is more of the vocal stabs. So you kind of have that, layered on top of this. So you have these stabs. And I mean, I know it can look a little bit overwhelming, but if you mix it properly and you spend time with it, it can sound quite good. Gotta keep remembering to, gotta make sure I keep remembering to mute that, because otherwise it just sounds like a delayed cacophony of a disaster. Right. So, and what I'll typically do too, is I'll have a little perusal. I've got a few drum and bass packs. I'll have a little perusal there of the of those packs and potentially throw those in as well, little sort of, you know, 2-bar, 4-bar loops, what have you. And then once again add these for atmosphere. These are crashes, I believe, and and little sort of one synth hits. So those are really good for, once again, adding that atmosphere. And then what I do, so this is getting into the nitty-gritty of the melodic production. So what I use is I always tend to go for this sort of close grand. It's already comes with FL Studio. It's close grand, which has a really nice sounding piano for what it's worth. I mean, it's not one of those big fancy VSTs like the Alicia Keys or whatever. But these aren't too bad. I mean, but what I really find, and I cannot emphasize this enough, emphasis or accents, but you know, this having a play around with the levels when you're sometimes, like for example, sometimes I'll just draw these in, sometimes I'll play them on my MIDI keyboard. This really changed the definition of the piano sound, of the mood, everything, the timbre, whatever you want to call it, really does alter it. It's it's really good. If you're like, oh, these pianos sound like really kind of hard and I don't like kind of the feel, just play around a bit with the accents, and kind of once you go into that 50%, I don't know if it's direct wave or the actual piano, but it emulates the pressing of the keys in a softer fashion. So for example, you're playing piano, if you've got the velocity cranked up to 100 and you hit a key, obviously it's going to sound quite large, quite loud and about to say large and in charge, but quite loud and in your face. But obviously if you just gently press on that key, you'll kind of get this subtle, quieter sound, and that's exactly what this does. So it's really neat that it emulates that. It doesn't just decrease the volume of the sample, it actually emulates the sound of a softer key being pressed in a softer fashion. So that's what I use the close grand. And then I love this, if this is the right one, yes. So Morphine in FL Studio has this really nice patch for the kind of genre that I make, for this sort of moody, dark drum and bass. This Morphine patch, if you're using FL Studio, deviating keys, I kind of play around with the delay and the reverb and the master envelope, because it can sometimes be really drenched in reverb if you just load up the preset. But listen to this. I don't know, it takes me to a different place. It's hard to describe, but it's just a really kind of nice, dark, moody patch. I love it. It's one of my favorites. And then here, I believe, just use some strings. I think this is within net. Yeah, this is Nexus, which Nexus is great for string patches and the like. So yeah, Drama's the one I use from the Omicron patch bank. So what we'll do is, so that's kind of each individual in the build up. So we'll list that build up again all together. But yeah, it just sounds really, really nice. Okay, sorry to deprive you of the drop there, but we'll get into that. So here we go. So we'll play this. We'll play this fully for a couple of bars, and then we'll go through each individual one. Right. So let's go back. So this, we've just used the same loop again. Yeah, nothing to see here really. We've already been over that. This is the layered bass it's talking about. Oh, it's just delicious. I can't get enough of it. Right, so this it's a Technion. So it was actually Technion. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Technion. He did neuro bass stuff, God, years ago. I downloaded this patch in 2011 or something, and I've sort of been using it off and on ever since. But it's a bit of a complicated patch, so feel free to kind of screen grab this, copy the dials and everything. This one, like I said, uses that similar kind of chorusing, but it's a really, really nice patch. Let's listen to it on its own just so you can appreciate it. Yeah, so what I did was I just kind of put a bit of a higher pass on that, because obviously we've got the sub coming through giving us the lows, so that the higher kind of patch, we've got that sort of crunch. So when the two are combined, you get this kind of really nice, you get those lows from the sub. Let me actually play a bit longer. We've got that really nice punch coming through on the sub, which, yeah, the two complement each other quite well, and it was definitely an accident that I kind of found the two worked. But yeah, you've got that kind of nice warm sub with the nice crispy, crunchy highs, mid to highs there with the Technion bass. So yeah, these, like I said, this is the patch. So I mean, if you guys want the patch, just let me know. I'm sure I can get it to you some way or another, on, I don't know, Mega Upload or whatever it is people use these days, Dropbox. I can get it to you if you guys want it. But anyway, so that's the basses there, and then let's get into the drums. So we have a very typical drum and bass pattern, and I'll show you that. It's a very typical pattern. Let's have a listen. I'll put everything here. Oh, we don't have any sound. Why might that be? Ah, yeah, we need to... Okay, still no sound, and why might that be? Something has been muted that shouldn't have been. Sorry guys, bear with. Not really sure why that's not working. You know what? Such a sausage. Ugh. Anyway, sorry about that. Absolute idiot. We'll just glaze over that. You guys didn't see that. Nothing happened. Right, back to where we go here. Right, so there's our drums. So I've got our kick. Yeah, I just used a kick from the, I think it's called the Evanston sample pack or something like that. Yeah, Eveson Deep and Liquid. Really nice pack. Yeah, really nice. So that's the kick. The The snare's just on the offbeat. There, and then use a couple of shuffles. The shuffles really kind of add, I find they add depth to the drums. I love using shuffles. Really, really nice. They really complement. They just kind of, I don't know, give it more depth. And then we have, yeah, little sort of percussion loop there, and then the hats to kind of fill the gaps. And then this is that drum loop. This is that drum loop I used earlier for the build-up. This, once again, it's kind of nice. Adds a little bit of extra depth for you. Yeah. So my tip. I mean, the drums. I suppose drums kind of speak for themselves. There's not too much to kind of go into here. I just think always, look, keep your eyes peeled. As other producers always say, sample choice is always important. You got to make sure that your kick is the kick you want and the kick that fits well in the mix. Same with the snares. For me, it was definitely trial and error. I was trying to use newer, more punchy snares that you hear in a lot more newer stuff. And they just sat horribly. They didn't sound right, and so I had to kind of play around, and so it went more for this sort of snare, that's much more how do you say, like kind of organic, I guess, rather than those really intense kind of snares that you hear in drum and bass. And then so percussion loops, the high pass break, and then we just have like another little sort of high passed loop as well. So there's not too much there with the drums, but that's kind of, that's how I put the drums together. So like I said, sort of the kick snare, and then let's see what we haven't covered here. So these are just more. These are just kind of nice little loops that I've used and kind of rearranged slightly like this. Just kind of chop them up, move them around a bit, played around with them. The real good thing about this particular genre is you can be creative as you like. And I know that people, you say that about any genre, but this particularly, you can really go to town on taking samples, dicing them up, playing around with them, seeing how well they sit, all the rest of it. Right, so I think we've covered these patches already. These were the piano patches and such. Let's cover this. So this is a really nice patch that I've got to credit. It was a YouTuber that did this one, and I can't remember who it was, so I'm sorry. It was just a really simple, basic patch in Serum. So I just did basic shapes, slight detune, here wavetables, and then you've got the LFO set to 1/8. So you kind of have that sort of, you can kind of hear it, can't you, oscillating a bit on this low pass filter that's set up, so you can kind of hear it. It's really simple. I mean, it is just the unison's up to 8 here. I'm just trying to see for you guys so you guys can see everything. But yeah, you got this, and then effects, bit of a chorus, bit of the mix on the chorus there, a little bit of feedback on the delay, normal, and then reverb, hall reverb. That really gives it the depth, the warmth. It's a lovely patch, and it's great. What I noticed too is if you do it in fifths, or are these sevenths? I should really know this stuff. Yeah, if you do it in fifths, that just gives a kind of a nice breadth to the sound, because I find with this patch, if you go too heavy on chords, like triad chords, it just doesn't sound right. It just doesn't have a good sound to it. It's kind of nice as monophonic, one note, or just like two notes. So that's that, and then so like I said, if there's anything you want me to kind of re-go over, or if you have any questions, I mean, please do comment, let me know. Yes, and then here we go, we have our samples again, are sort of chopped up. There's kind of your nice little you know, vocal stabs and everything. And then here we go again with that sort of sample, you know, from the KHMR pack there. So yeah, all in all, that's kind of how you can get really creative with the genre. So it's yeah, it's a lot of fun. You can kind of play around with these, take samples, you know, just kind of have lots of fun with it. Okay, I think this looks like, yeah, because this is just that same patch again, and then yeah, a lot of it, I mean, this particular track is a little bit repetitive, obviously, not gonna lie, but it's yeah, so it's pretty good. Let's go and have a look in the mixer. So I mean, I don't know, a lot of people say my mixing leaves a lot to be desired. I don't know, I think mixing is a very personal thing, but to kind of give people an idea. So the kick that I work with, I just to basically cut the lows. I don't want that kick bringing in too much low. We've got those subs coming through, or the sub rather. There isn't more than one. We've got the sub coming through. It just helps to keep those lows cut, and then I kind of, you know, bring down a little bit here, and that's more, like I said, it's more just listening to it, getting an ear for it. How do you want that kick to sound? Okay, well, and typically, yeah, you definitely want to keep the lows cut off. We're not making, you know, virtual riot drum and bass here, or dubstep. You know, we're making much more ambient melodic stuff, so the emphasis is much more on the bass, the melodic content, rather than the drums. But you definitely do want a snare that punches, that's for sure. So this is our snare. So the snare I didn't do a lot to. Yeah, I did put a bit of compression on it. Multi-band compression, just brought those mids and highs up a little bit. But that was just something you kind of did to ear as well. And then we brought up a little bit. You see, the sweet spot for snares is around that 180 hertz, 200 hertz. So just brought it up a little bit, just to kind of bring out that snap, because that's around the frequency you hear that real snap. You know, in snares, you know, they call it the Cohen sound rage, because if you guys are familiar with Cohen sound and their early work, these really like snares that were just insane. They'd take out your eardrums, just completely rammed at 200 hertz. So yeah, I didn't do too much to the snares. Same with, this is the hats, channel 4. You guys probably are like, how do you know? But it's I kind of have a system that I do, and I'm not the most organized. I mean, a lot of people would look at this and go, you're insane, because I probably should have it all labeled and looking pretty, but whatever. I don't care. I just want to get to the nitty gritty. So reverb, yeah. I mean, it's put a bit of wet. It, you know, made it a little bit of a larger size, but there wasn't, once again, not too much. And then yeah, completely kill those lows with the hats. You don't need them coming through, at least for me. Some people might say, oh no, that's sacrilege, but for me, I think that's fine. I think you know, cutting those lows off, keeping those highs there is good. So that's how I manage the hats. And then this channel now, here I was talking about being Mr. Organised, and I can't remember what 5 was. Right. So 5 is the cello. So we did go a little bit, oh, okay, slow down there. Steady on, sailor. We don't need all of this right here. So we've got, yeah, so the cello, cut those lows, because we don't need the lows coming through with the cello. But we do have, yeah, some sort of those low mids, yeah, low mids there, and then you've got the high mids coming through, so you kind of have that sort of warmth coming off it. A lot of compression. The stereo shaper helps widen it. Stereo shapers are good for string sections, I find. Watching a few tutorials, if you're doing vocals or working with strings, the stereo shaper helps. All it does just kind of widens the sound a bit. I play with this to my own sort of liking, so you might find something that works for you. A lot of reverb, but not too much wet, so you're not kind of getting overwhelmed. That flangus got cancelled, I didn't bother with that. The filter, yeah, and then that filter obviously is modulated to reflect, because we have a cutoff frequency that goes up and down, etc, etc. And then 6, let's see what's... Oh, okay, 6 is our high bass. So the 6 is, yeah, see how I completely cut off those lows, because I was talking about this earlier. Get those lows cut so that you have room for the sub, so that they're not. The problem is you don't want them basically fighting it out in the mix. You don't want those highs fighting it out with the lows, and it just sounds horrible. This, I believe, is for the lows. Yeah. The sub. So I put a bit of compression on the low, so it really brings out the low frequency. I don't know. People have conflicting opinions. Some people say a sub should just be left alone, shouldn't be touched. But I think that's personal preference. I think everyone kind of has to do what's right for them. Yeah, I mean, you cut off the highs. I do this, which I know might seem a bit redundant, but you do this just in case you're getting those slightly higher octaves where you're hitting those low mids, those mids. Like let's play it back. Okay, yeah, not being super organized. Let's play it back. So you've got this going on here. So yeah. So what you can kind of see happens if you don't take those lows off, those highs off rather, you start to really see it starts to muddy the mix a little bit, not too much, but a little bit. So it's like just take the worry out. So but yes, I'm definitely of the opinion subs should try to be left alone as much as possible, because I think they're just, you know, they're a clean sound in their own right. They don't need much work. Okay, so now we're on to 8, which let's remind ourselves what 8 is. I think this might be an effects channel. Yeah. So that is our little vocal chops. Yeah, so vocal chops, what we did is we just cut those lows, add a little bit on the mid-highs, a little bit on the mids. That was fine. Yeah, bit of delay. So I put a bit of delay there, a little bit on the wet, very low on the feedbacks. We don't want it to be too overwhelming. And then we have, yeah, a bit of the delay here. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, because some of them, this one, for example, gets turned on and off. Like, for example, if you go back here and you hear where it says Seasons Grow, or whatever it is. See, hear that kind of delay. That's where that kicks in, and you can see the automation set up there for that. So yeah, sounds really good. Now let's hear what's on number 9. Okay, is there anything on number 9? I think we have Diddly Squit on number 9. Yeah, okay. I don't know what was routed to number 9, but nothing, I guess. I should have looked at the actual channel before. Okay, my apologies, folks. This is the repercussions of not properly organising your channels. Right, okay, so chapter insert 10. I do not know what that's linked to. Yeah. See, what can happen with a lot of my work, and like I said, this probably drives people nuts. I'll set up channels, I'll have them all EQ'd a certain way, and then I'll go no, and then I'll start another channel for some weird reason, and then just abandon that channel. So I'm not sure what happened. Okay, let's see what's routed to number 11. Okay, this is a little sample of, yeah, and that's just EQ and delay. Pretty simple. EQ, yeah, maximum wet, about 1/3 on the feedback. But yeah, definitely big, sets the mood. Yeah, and then these are the pianos, so imagine you guys all want to know what's going on here. Okay. So yeah, lows are cut, don't need those. Multi-band compression, being very wary, we don't want to let too many of the lows in. Obviously we don't want it, we want enough of the low to give it volume, but we don't want to obviously overdo it because we've got the subs coming in. And then yeah, a bit of delay again. Okay, is this another phantom bus? Do we have anything linked to that? Okay, that's another sample. Yeah, no, a bit of reverb on that one, bit of delay. But yeah. And then I set up a sidechain bus. So, like I said, I don't know what you guys do, other drum and bass producers out there, but I like to sidechain. It just gives a much better sound. I just find it just when the kick and drum need to come in, that sidechain just sounds really good. So the way I set up the sidechain is I have a sidechain master, which is this channel 1. I link basically a ghost kick, which is here. So this is just kick. I link up a ghost kick, which I have, but it's, you know, no one hears it. I have it linked to the kick and the snare, and then I put in a peak controller, hit mute. You kind of have to tweak these to your own liking. And then what you do is you do this first. You link to controller, you select Fruity Peak Controller, Peak Control Peak, boom, there you go. And then in here, you hit mute, and then you kind of play around. You watch it here and see how much sidechain you want. So for example, I have the volume up quite high. The bass is where it starts, so you want that bass sitting around kind of, you know, the 80% mark, you know, in line with these, and then the volume. And then yeah, so and the only thing, my only sort of word of advice is if you have a sidechain bus like this set up, like the way I do it, just keep an eye on those levels because it can get quite easily, the levels can get a bit too much. And then yeah, and then on the master, which once again people may or may not agree with, I just use a Maximus. Kind of gives that sort of bit clearer, more more distinct sound. I find I put on a clear master RMS. I bring the master right down because it's so loud if you just leave it down to this, and then you just kind of I play around with the lows, the mids, and the highs. I like having a bit of lows coming through because of the sub, and then I like the highs because of all the melodic content. Right, what else is there? I suppose I'll show you guys how I make my white noise machine. So the white noise machine is this little guy here. So we'll just go like this. Yeah, but I bet you I need to unmute all these. Right. So making these is pretty easy. So it's just I use for white noise. I use this in a lot of my tracks. So the white noise machine that I use, we have it here. White noise machine. That's routed to 20. So yeah, it's really easy to make one of these. I just bring the mids and the highs up a little bit, but really what you do is you set the band pass to full, resonance about a third of the way up, and then you modulate this, right click, create automation clip, and then you basically bring that up, and that's what creates that kind of swooshing sound. And then I suppose I should tell you how to even make the patch to begin with. How about that? Yeah, 3 times OSC, click on the dice. It used to just be like a noise symbol, but now it's dice, which I don't know why. Maybe someone can tell me. But anyways, I think that's everything. I've been waffling on for far too long, but hopefully you guys find this useful. Let me know, comments, questions, all the rest of it. Share with your buddies, other people that might find this useful. Obviously, yeah. Any comments are well received. If you have any advice, any suggestions, please do let me know. All right.